See, over the years, I had developed a habit. Call it paranoia, call it professionalism. I called it survival. Every time I touched a major system, I kept copies, backups, notes, not company property, just personal records. And on that drive, sitting in my garage, was nearly 2 decades of Meridian's digital history. Passwords, backups, audit trails, logs of financial transfers, communications I'd been CC'd on and never deleted. Most of it was boring, routine. But as I sifted through the files that night, I noticed something that didn't add up. An internal expense report from 2 years ago showing $500,000 allocated for infrastructure upgrades. But I knew for a fact we hadn't upgraded a thing that year. The servers were still the same ancient machines we'd been patching for ages. Where had that money gone? Another file, a legal compliance checklist, supposedly signed by me. Except I hadn't signed it. Someone had copy-pasted my digital signature. Sloppy. The deeper I looked, the more inconsistencies I found. Projects that existed on paper but not in reality. Invoices paid to consultants. I'd never heard of a steady trickle of money disappearing into nothing. And Daniel's knee was on every approval, every sign-off. By sunrise, my suspicion had hardened into certainty. My firing wasn't about cost-cutting or downsizing. It was about removing the one person who could connect the dots. Me. Laura woke up around 6 and found me still at the desk, eyes bloodshot, surrounded by papers and USB drives. She touched my shoulder gently. "James, honey, you didn't sleep." I shook my head. "They didn't just fire me, Laura. They're hiding something. Something big." She frowned, worry creasing her forehead. "What do you mean?" I leaned back, running a hand through my thinning hair. "I mean, $500,000 disappeared into thin air. I mean, forged documents with my name on them. I mean, they cut me out because I was getting too close." She sat down across from me, her voice soft but firm. "So what are you going to do?" I looked her straight in the eye. "What I should have done years ago. I'm going to protect myself. And then, I'm going to make sure they answer for this." That day, while most people would have been polishing resumes or drowning sorrows in a bar, I went to work my own work. I cataloged every suspicious file, every discrepancy. I built timelines, I cross-referenced approvals with missing upgrades. And the more I dug, the clearer it became. Meridian Technologies wasn't just cutting corners. They were laundering money through fake projects, fake consultants, ghost upgrades, and the worst part, the fraud wasn't just lining Daniel's pockets, it was propping up the company itself. Without those phantom numbers, Meridian wasn't the successful powerhouse it pretended to be. It was a hollow shell, days from collapse. That night, I made myself a promise. They thought they had buried me, but I was about to become the ghost that haunted them. And ghosts don't play fair. Once I knew what Meridian had been hiding, the rage inside me burned hot. But rage alone doesn't win wars. Strategy does. I was going to storm into their office, waving accusations that would get me laughed out the door, maybe even sued for defamation. No, if I was going to bring them down, I had to do it, right? Quiet, methodical, lethal. So, I started with 3 goals. Protect myself. If they forged my signature once, they could do it again. Collect undeniable proof. Not just suspicions, evidence no one could ignore. Choose the battlefield. Would I go to the authorities, the press, or somewhere darker? The first goal was easy. I hired a lawyer, not one of those high-profile sharks. Just a quiet, meticulous man named Gregson, who specialized in corporate compliance. I didn't tell him everything at first, just that I suspected my former employer might try to scapegoat me for bad bookkeeping. He advised me to secure my records and keep them off any network. Good advice, side, already done it. The second goal, that took work. For weeks, I treated revenge like a full-time job. Every morning, while Laura left for her nursing shift, I brewed coffee, sat at my desk, and combed through 17 years of digital dust. I built spreadsheets, mapping missing funds. I traced payments to shell companies registered in tiny Caribbean islands. I even found one consultant's account linked directly to an LLC Daniel himself had set up under his wife's maiden name. It was beautiful, like watching a puzzle come together, except the picture was a masterpiece of fraud. But collecting data wasn't enough. If I handed raw files to the feds, they'd drown in paperwork. So I packaged it. Cross-referenced documents that made it impossible to ignore. I turned chaos into clarity, and clarity into a weapon. The third goal, choosing the battlefield, was harder. At night, Laura and I would sit on the porch, sipping tea while I laid out options. I could go to the FBI, I said one evening, but they might take months, years, even. By then, Daniel could vanish with millions. What about the FCC, she asked. Possible, but again, bureaucracy. I shook my head. And you know these guys, they'll try to pin it on me. Disgruntled ex-employee, I need something faster. Something that cuts straight to the heart. Laura gave me a long look. "James, you're not talking about doing anything illegal, are you?" I didn't answer right away. The truth was I wasn't sure. Part of me wanted to torch the company's servers, leak every dirty secret online, watch them drown in lawsuits and bad press. But another part of me knew that would just make me look like a bitter old man lashing out. No, I needed a plan that was clean, undeniable, and devastating. That's when I remembered something. Years ago, Daniel himself had bragged during a late-night drink session. Reputation is more valuable than cash. Kill a man's reputation, and you've already buried him. He was right. Meridian's strength wasn't its balance sheet, it was the illusion of trust. Investors trusted it. Clients trusted it. The government trusted it. If I could pull the curtain back at the right moment, everything would collapse overnight. So I designed my plan around exposure. Not gradual, not piecemeal, surgical. One strike, maximum impact. Here's how it would work. Assemble the dossier. A complete record of every fraudulent transaction, every forged document, every shady consultant. Choose the audience. Instead of going through slow channels, I'd hit the company where it hurt most, its clients and investors. Time the strike. Meridian's annual shareholder meeting was 2 months away. Perfect. Daniel would be on stage, boasting about profits. When the floor would collapse beneath him, but I wasn't reckless. If I went in guns blazing, they'd come after me legally, maybe even criminally. So I set up safeguards. I created multiple encrypted copies of the dossier, stored in cloud accounts under fake names. I scheduled timed email releases using a script. If anything happened to me, the files would automatically be sent to journalists, regulators, and clients worldwide. I even recorded a video. Just me, sitting in my study, looking straight into the camera. My name is James Wilson. For 17 years, I worked at Meridian Technologies. What you're about to see are records of systematic fraud perpetrated by its CEO, Daniel Harper. I kept it calm, professional, no emotion, no theatrics, just facts. Because facts cut deeper than anger. As the weeks passed, I almost felt centered, like I had finally reclaimed control of my life. Every spreadsheet I built, every log I cross-checked, brought me one step closer to justice. But revenge has a funny way of testing you. One afternoon, while running errands, I bumped into a former colleague at the grocery store, a young analyst named Rebecca I had mentored years ago. She was bright-eyed, ambitious, one of the few people I'd actually liked working with. "James," she exclaimed, surprised, "I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry." "Thanks," I said, managing a tight smile. "How are things at Meridian?" Her smile faltered. She hesitated before answering. "Honestly, weird. Budgets keep shifting. Projects vanish overnight. And Daniel, he's been different. Nervous, secretive." She lowered her voice. "Some of us think something's going on, but nobody dares ask." That was when I realized something I hadn't considered. Innocent people were still inside that sinking ship. People like Rebecca. People who had trusted me, and if I pulled the trigger recklessly, they'd go down too. That night, lying awake beside Laura, I stared at the ceiling and thought about collateral damage. Was I about to ruin lives just to hurt Daniel? The answer came quietly, steadily. No, this wasn't about revenge alone. It was about justice, and justice meant I had to hit Daniel without destroying the innocent. So I adjusted the plan. Instead of nuking the company wholesale, I would target Daniel and the board specifically. My dossier would prove fraud came from the top. If regulators moved in, the rank-and-file employees might still keep their jobs under new leadership. It was surgical vengeance, not a shotgun blast, precise, clean, devastating. By the time the shareholder meeting rolled around, I had everything ready. Dossier polished, email triggers set, safeguards in place. Daniel thought he had buried me. But I was about to walk into that meeting like a ghost with unfinished business. And when I was done, his empire wouldn't just crack, it would shatter. The day of Meridian's annual shareholder meeting felt like stepping onto a stage I'd been rehearsing for my whole life. I woke early, shaved carefully, put on my best suit, the same dark navy I used to wear for client presentations. Laura kissed me at the door, whispering, "Be careful, James." Careful. That word echoed in my mind all morning. I was just about to expose a man. I was about to pull the mask off an entire empire. The venue was a downtown hotel ballroom, polished marble floors, and chandeliers glittering like false promises. Rows of chairs filled with investors, analysts, employees, cameras from business media outlets dotted the back wall. And then, there he was, Daniel Harper, my old boss, my executioner turned target, standing at the podium in his tailored suit, grinning that salesman's grin as he welcomed everyone. "Ladies and gentlemen, Meridian Technologies has never been stronger," he declared. Applause rippled through the crowd. "This year we've seen record profits, expanding markets," and I almost laughed. "Record profits," you should have said, "record fraud." I took my seat near the middle, blended in, just another suit in the audience. But inside, my pulse beat steady, like a war drum. The first hour passed with Daniel parading numbers, charts, projections, lies, all of it. And the crowd ate it up. Investors nodded. Analysts scribbled notes. Employees clapped, but then came the Q&A. The moment I had chosen as my battlefield, a microphone was passed around for questions. Softballs at first. Market forecasts, product launches, growth strategies. Daniel handled them with ease, that fake charisma oozing from every word. Then my hand went up. For a second, Daniel's eyes flickered when he saw me. Just a flash of recognition, surprise, maybe fear, but he masked it quickly. "Yes, sir, the gentleman in the navy suit," the moderator said, pointing at me. The microphone reached my hand. I stood slowly, steadying my breath. And then, in a calm, clear voice, I said, "James Wilson. 17 years at Meridian Technologies." One afternoon, about 2 weeks after, I got a call from Gregson, my lawyer. "James," he said, "you might want to sit down for this. The feds are offering Daniel a deal. If he pleads guilty, he'll be looking at a reduced sentence, but we're talking serious prison time either way. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. It's airtight." I leaned back in my chair, letting the words sink in. Prison. Daniel Harper, the man who fired me like trash, would trade his tailored suits for an orange jumpsuit. "Good," I said quietly. But there was one more twist. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "James," a broken voice rasped on the other end. It was Daniel. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the arrogance, the polished tone. He sounded smaller, weaker. "Why?" he whispered. "Why did you do this to me? You could have just walked away." I let the silence stretch before answering. "Why?" I repeated. "Because you forgot who built your empire. Because you treated loyalty like it was disposable. Because you looked me in the eye after 17 years and said I was nothing. And Daniel, I wanted to remind you what nothing feels like." He didn't respond. Just a ragged breath. Then the line went dead. I sat there, staring at the phone, my chest tight. Was it revenge? Yes. Was it justice? Maybe. But in that moment, I realized something. Daniel had already destroyed himself. All I did was hand him the match. The weeks turned into months. The trials dragged on. The media frenzy died down, as all frenzies do, replaced by the next scandal. But for me, life slowly began to heal. I spent more time with Laura. We took long walks, cooked dinners together, even laughed again. For the first time in years, I wasn't chained to endless deadlines, late-night emails, or Daniel's constant demands. I started consulting work, part-time, smaller companies that respected my time, valued my expertise. The pay was comfortable, the hours humane, and every so often, when I passed a newsstand or saw a headline about Daniel Harper's sentencing, I'd smile quietly to myself, not because I enjoyed his suffering, but because I knew the truth. He'd brought it all on himself. Loyalty is a gift. Respect is a choice, and betrayal always carries a price. And Daniel Harper paid in full. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Maybe that's true. But sitting here now, months after Daniel Harper's downfall, I've realized something. Revenge alone doesn't heal you. It feels good, yes, it fills a hole, but it doesn't rebuild what was lost. For 17 years, I thought my value came from my work, from the late nights, the endless loyalty, the sacrifices I made for a company that never truly saw me. But losing it all, and then watching Daniel lose everything he thought mattered, taught me a different lesson. Your worth isn't measured by how much you give to people who don't respect you. It's measured by the life you build, the people who stand beside you, the dignity you refuse to surrender. Laura and I, we've grown closer than ever. She told me once, during all the chaos, that she'd rather have me jobless and free than chained to a desk that was killing me. I didn't believe her then, but I do now. And my daughter, she came home for dinner last week, brought her kids. We sat around the table, laughing, sharing stories. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a father again instead of just an employee. As for Meridian Technologies, it's gone. Dissolved, bankrupt, a hollow shell of what it once was. Some say it's a tragedy. I say it's justice. A company built on lies, greed, and arrogance doesn't deserve to survive. But the bigger victory, the quiet one, it's this: I'm free. I don't live in fear of being discarded anymore. I don't measure my life in hours billed or emails sent. I measure it in walks with my wife, in meals with my family, in the peace of knowing I stood up for myself when it mattered most. Sometimes I think back to Daniel's voice on the phone that night, broken, desperate, asking me why. The truth is, he still doesn't understand. He never will, because men like him believe loyalty is owed, not earned. They believe power is permanent, not fragile. But me, I learned the opposite. Loyalty is precious. Respect is everything. And power can vanish in an instant. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: never give your entire soul to someone who wouldn't notice if you disappeared. Because in the end, your life is yours. Your dignity is yours. And the people who truly love you, they are the ones worth fighting for. Daniel Harper learned that lesson too late. I learned it just in time, and as I sit here now, older, maybe a little wiser, I can say this without hesitation. They thought firing me would end my story, but in reality, it's where my life finally began. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy true revenge stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that will keep you hooked till the very end. The room shifted, a murmur rippled across the audience. People turned in their seats. Daniel's smile froze. My question, Daniel, I continued, is simple. Could you explain why funds from Meridian's R&D budget were transferred into accounts belonging to Harper Consulting LLC, a company registered under your wife's maiden name? Silence. Absolute silence. Daniel blinked. His lips parted, but no words came out. A flush crept up his neck. Excuse me, Mr. Wilson, he stammered finally, forcing a smile. I think you must be mistaken. I shook my head. No mistake, I have the documents. 17 years of records. In fact, every transfer, every forged signature. Would you like me to share them with the room? Gasps erupted. Cameras swung toward us. Investors leaned forward whispering. Daniel's mask slipped. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Security, he began, but he didn't get the chance. Because right then, the timed emails I had scheduled went out. Hundreds of inboxes across the room pinged simultaneously. Phones buzzed. Tablets lit up. Investors, journalists, employees, they all received the same message. Attached was my dossier. Neatly organized, ironclad, impossible to deny. I watched as people scrolled through the documents. Spreadsheets of missing millions. Scans of forged approvals. Wire transfers to offshore accounts. My video introduction. And then the chaos began. Is this true? Someone shouted. How long has this been happening? You lied to us. Daniel tried to speak, but his words drowned in the storm of outrage. Investors stormed toward the stage. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters fired questions rapid fire. He looked at me then, not as an employee, not as a subordinate, but as the man who had just dismantled his empire in front of the world. And I smiled. Security finally rushed in, trying to calm the crowd. The moderator shouted for order, but it was useless. The shareholders' meeting had turned into a battlefield and Daniel was bleeding out. I slipped out quietly. No need to stay. The fire was already burning, and it would consume everything in its path. By the time I reached the hotel lobby, my phone was buzzing with calls and messages. Former colleagues, journalists, even regulators. Word was spreading faster than I could have imagined. Outside, the city seemed brighter, sharper. For the first time in months, I breathed freely. But the story didn't end there. That evening, headlines blazed across every business network. Meridian CEO accused of massive fraud by former employee. Leaked documents reveal years of financial misconduct. Shareholders demand immediate investigation. Daniel's face was everywhere sweating, cornered, exposed. Within 48 hours, the SEC launched a formal investigation. The FBI announced subpoenas. Investors filed lawsuits. The board of directors scrambled to distance themselves, suspending Daniel pending inquiry. And me, I stayed quiet, calm, safe. My lawyer Gregson assured me the dossier was airtight, that my safeguards protected me from retaliation. I wasn't the villain, I was the whistleblower. Still, part of me couldn't believe it had worked. After all those sleepless nights, all that planning, it had actually worked. Laura hugged me that night and whispered, "You did it, James, you finally did it." But as I held her, staring out the window into the dark, a strange thought crept in. Justice had been served. Daniel was finished. But revenge was just getting started. The fire I lit at that shareholders meeting spread faster than even I expected. Within hours, the story dominated every financial news outlet. By the next morning, it was everywhere: newspapers, television, social media. Meridian Technologies wasn't just a company anymore. It was a scandal. Daniel Harper's polished image, the visionary CEO, the market genius, the family man, disintegrated overnight. Reporters camped outside Meridian's headquarters. Cameras followed him from his office to his car, shouting questions he couldn't answer. "Mr. Harper, did you funnel company funds into your own accounts? How much money are we talking about? Do you deny these documents are real?" He said nothing, just ducked his head and shoved past them. The one smug smile erased, replaced with something I'd never thought I'd see on his face: shame. But it didn't stop there. The SEC froze Meridian's accounts pending investigation. The FBI raided his home office. Shareholders filed lawsuits, demanding restitution. And the board, the same board that once toasted him with champagne and praised his leadership, they threw him to the wolves. Within 48 hours, Daniel Harper was removed as CEO, stripped of his position, and placed under federal investigation. Meridian's stock plummeted. Employees scrambled to save what they could. Clients canceled contracts. In just days, the empire he'd built on lies began collapsing in slow motion, and I watched it all from my living room couch, sipping coffee, Laura would glance at me as the news played, sometimes worried, sometimes amazed. James, she whispered one night as Daniel's mugshot flashed across the TV. You destroyed him. I didn't answer. I just sat there, staring at the screen. Because yes, I had destroyed him, but more than that, I had exposed him, pulled his mask off, and shown the world what kind of man he really was. Still, the fallout wasn't just financial. No, that was only the beginning. Daniel's personal life began crumbling, too. His wife, whose name appeared on those shadow companies, filed for divorce within a week. Neighbors who once envied the mansion on the hill now whispered and pointed as moving trucks hauled away furniture. His kids were hounded by reporters outside their private school. The man who once strutted through life untouchable was now reduced to a headline, a punchline, a cautionary tale. And me, for the first time in years, I felt seen. Emails poured in, former colleagues thanking me for standing up, strangers calling me a hero, journalists begging for interviews. But I wasn't interested in fame. I wasn't interested in applause. All I wanted was peace.